Runner, Part 2, Chapter 3. By the door stood a silver-haired guy, neatly dressed in a sport coat and slacks, but not wearing a tie. "Good afternoon," he said, smiling as if we were customers at the supermarket. "Boxes are to your left." Four other people were there, three women and a homeless guy. Two of the women and the man acted just like Dad and me. They moved up and down the aisles, picking out spaghetti noodles, cans of soup, jars of peanut butter, stuff like that. They kept their heads down and their mouths shut. But the woman wearing the Washington State Cougar sweatshirt was different. "You got any other crackers besides these?" she called out to the man in front. "All we have is what's out," the man called back to her. "How about cookies then? My girls like Oreos, and I don't even see one package of Oreos." "Everything we have is on the shelves," the man repeated. "You must have more stuff somewhere. Are you hiding it from us?" My dad and I filled our boxes quickly. "Thanks," my dad said as we headed out the door. "We'll be open Tuesday and Thursday next week, regular hours." The boxes were too heavy to carry the 12 blocks to Market Street. There was nothing to do but wait for the bus, take it to Market, and then transfer to the bus to the marina. It had taken an hour already. It looked like it might take another hour to return. My dad sat down inside the bus shelter, but I was too nervous to sit. Every few minutes I'd take a step into the street to see if I could spot the bus. I needed to get back, I needed to run, I needed to check the rocks. When I stepped out for what must have been the 10th time, a blue Jetta came over the crest of the hill. I stepped back onto the sidewalk, but Melissa had spotted me. As she drove past, she tapped lightly on the horn and waved. I managed to wave back. She turned right at the corner and was gone. 2 minutes later, I again stepped into the street to look for the bus. But instead of the bus, there was the blue Jetta again. This time, Melissa pulled over and rolled down the window. "You need a ride?" Before I could turn her down, my dad stood up. "We sure do, young lady," he called out, smiling broadly and picking up the boxes of groceries at his feet. Melissa smiled back. "You can put the groceries in the trunk," she said, and she reached down to pull the lever that popped open the trunk of the car. My dad quickly put his box in the trunk. I picked up the second box and loaded it as well. My dad climbed into the back seat as if he were a little kid, while Melissa and I sat in the front. "I didn't know there was a grocery store around here," she said as she pulled into traffic. "There isn't," I replied. I knew what I'd said made no sense to her, but she let it go. "You going to your boat?" I nodded. She drove down to Market and made the turn toward the marina. I wanted to say something, but my mind was blank. In the back seat, my father sat staring out the window. Just after she drove past the Ballard locks, the sailboats moored in the marina came into view. Behind them was Puget Sound, gray like the sky, and deep in the clouds were the Olympic Mountains. "It's so beautiful here," Melissa said. "I keep meaning to come down here and run along the water." She paused. "You still run, don't you?" "Sometimes," I said. "What are you talking about?" my father said from the back. "You run every day." "You can let us off up there," I said, pointing to an empty parking lot. "Shouldn't I pull up closer to the pier?" "There's never any parking by the pier. This is great." She came to a stop and reached down to pull the lever to open the trunk. "Thanks for the ride," I said, stepping out of the car. "See you tomorrow," she answered. "Yeah, see you tomorrow." "Thanks," my dad said. "I'm Melissa Watts," she said then, leaning back and shaking his hand. "You and my dad went to Ingram High together. Trevor Watts, do you remember him?" His eyes widened. "Sure," he said. "I remember Trevor." "Come on, Dad," I said before he could say any more. "Let's get those boxes onto the boat."